Thank you for being present for a long time. From now on, we're going to have coffee break and resume after 20 minutes. So please come back here by 5 past 3. 5 past 3. Gentlemen, second afternoon session will be started soon. Please be seated. Okay, we're going to start second afternoon session. We have now 3 teams for second afternoon session. First team will be team PeAce with the title Prevention and Management of Maritime Dangerous Goods Accident considering IMDG code. Please welcome team PeAce with big hand.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Have you enjoyed the coffee break? I'm going to present our view about HNS accident prevention and handlings. Our presentation composed at first background, second our proposals, and then our conclusions. As you can see this United Nations shipment trend line, the quantity of goods transported through the ocean has been increased 2,000. According to this trend line, chemical, oil, and gas shipments, which are called HNS, are also increased. These are some of the examples of HNS accidents. Actually, general public don't know about IMDG codes, except for people like us studying about the oceans. So I'll explain the IMDG's definition. IMDG is International Maritime Dangerous Goods Code. It is accepted international guideline to safe transportation of dangerous goods by water on vessel. The main purpose of IMDG codes are to protect crew members and marine pollution. We use this formula to figure out the risk. Risk means multiplication of frequency by severity. So, the severity and frequency is the main part of accidents. Today, we will suggest training and placarding to reduce the frequency and new measurement, which is named container pocket, to reduce the severity. Next presenter will introduce the suggestions.
Thank you for introduction. I will present about methods to reduce frequency. So before I talk about my methods to introduce how to reduce frequency, have you ever been to port before? Maybe most of you have it. So what can you find in the port? Maybe I have seen thousands of containers with different placards on it. And that placard is to indicate the type of good that is loaded in the container. So there's a 4 placards attached in the container. And this is currently the placard which we are using right now, which labels with the class number and the symbol. As you can see, this placard, you can see that we have to be careful with the flame of them. Now these are class numbers. The class numbers are divided into the extinguish rule, which states the tools and rules to appropriate extinguish material during the emergency situation. And in current regulation, that the minimum dimension of the placarding is to require in 250 millimeters. But considering the sea condition, we think it's too small. How can you classify such a large container? Can you see 250 millimeters of placard from the outside of the ship? I don't think it's possible. It's impossible. So we would like to say that we have to enlarge the dimensions of the placards to 400 millimeters, at least 400 millimeters. I'm not saying that this is a maximum dimension. We are saying that we have to enlarge the minimum dimensions to 400 millimeters. Why? Because as we all know that extinguish of the fire is not done by the crew members or seafarers. The extinguish of the fire that is happening in the ships are done by Coast Guard or the firefighters, which is the coast firefighters. Which means they are not the specialized ones who are trained well to know just by looking at this class number, 5.2. What do you mean by 5.2? Have you all known it? Maybe some of you did, but most of us, we did not know what is 5.2. As well as Coast Guard and firefighters in the sea, they don't even know it. Which means that is why the size and scales of accidents that get bigger and bigger and we cannot stop. So another suggestion that came from PeAce is, why don't we mention the tools on the placard itself? So some of you here cannot clearly picture, so I have bought the placard to show it very clearly. So this is a placard, the current placard that we are using right now. But is this too small, is it? So we have to enlarge it to 400 millimeters, at least 400 millimeters. And I'm saying that what I'd like to emphasize is that we need no cost. Why? Because we can just write on it. The current placard, you can just write the tools on it with your pen, or if you have a chance, that you can print it out once more when the regulation starts. And that is why I like to emphasize that we have to write down the tools on the placard itself with the less cost. Thank you for your help. So carry on with my presentation. So just by enlarging the placard itself, that we can achieve the reduction, increase of the crew members, the safety of the crew members, and increase the possibilities of survival, and the increased efficiency of the first action. I'm sorry for that breaking of the font size. Anyway, so just by mentioning the tools on the placard itself, we can achieve the reduction in the chain of communication. As I mentioned in the front, that the fire extinguished by who? Coast Guards. And we can reduce the scales of accident and also the reductions of the damage, which is all related to the cost. So what I think is that making of regulation is important, but distribution of regulation is also important. So we have to distribute this regulation in a very effective way. So we have to work cooperate with that classification association so that we can easily spread our regulation on the field by spreading to the ship associations in each country, and that will be very effective. And another way that I have to mention is that plan coding and the training. As you can see that number of accidents caused by carelessness of the crew members or seafarers has been increasing throughout the years. But the technology is improving, but still the accidents is increasing. Why? Due to carelessness. But it's surprising to know that the seafarers are not included in the training. So we have to, why don't we include the seafarers in the compulsory training so that they get trained so they can do the first action very effectively when they face a situation. So the next presenter will present about the container pocket, which is a new idea to extinguish a fire. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about the way to reduce severity of dangerous goods accidents. First, I'm going to explain the well-known accidents. In 1998, the Sealand Marina had got an explosion. About 2 facilities, including 15 containers, had gone overboard because of the accident. Next, and in 1998 also, the DG Harmony got an explosion. About $16 billion of losses have occurred. And maybe the most well-known accident, the Hyundai Fortune in 2006. In 2006, it had an accident. Luckily, there were no casualties, but around $800 million of losses have occurred. One common thing of these accidents is that the reason is unclear. So, the after measure when the accident occurred is really, really important. Now, let us think about the real issue when the accident occurs. Huge blasts or noises and people get feared. So, and because the dangerous goods are so dangerous to people, they have no choices but to sing it. We are just leaning on the machines or firefighting boats to come faster. So that's why I'm emphasizing the after measures. And we have thought about the many methods to decrease severity. First, placing sprinkler into the containers and extinguish by each class rules as we mentioned before. For example, extinguish by sand to class 4.1 or extinguish by copious quantities water to class number 1. But we have concluded that it couldn't be realized because the pipe should be installed to each containers. Then, we have thought about the intelligent containers. It is a wireless system that transmits the important data of containers like temperature, pressures, or humidity. It can detect danger and prevent accidents in earlier stage. But this one had a cost problem. No one would like to buy this expensive thing. Then we have thought about the casing container. It is a large container which can contain about 8 containers. And if the fire happens, it protects the containers and prevents the fire to spread to other containers. However, this idea was also considered as unrealistic because of the loading and unloading problem. And we couldn't sure enough about the ability of materials. Then how about this? We suggest a container pocket which can fight with fire immediately. Let's put the extinguishing chemical powders into the pocket and hang them on the ceiling of the container. If the fire starts, the pocket will be opened and the powder will be spread on the fire. As this powder is cheap ether, which is about $300 per 1 ton, this one is free of cost problems. So we can expect easy, cheap, and fast extinguishing effect. Now look at this table. As you can see, the ship losses because of fire and explosion is placing in third place. However, we can remove risks by these simple 3 things: plate cutting, training, and container pocket. For example, let's apply to the real issue about the Hyundai Fortune. About $800 million of losses occurred. There are no additional costs to plate cutting and training, because in case of plate cutting, we can just write down the new rules to existing plate cut, and in case of training, we can just add some lectures to existing seafarer safety lecture. What about the container pocket? First, as the extinguishing dry powder would cost about $300 per 1 ton, and if we suppose there exist 5,000 TEU dangerous containers in 15,000 TEU container ship, and 5 kilograms of extinguishing powder to each dangerous goods containers, it can be calculated about 25,000 kilograms of dry powder is needed. That is about 27 tons. So we need just $8,000 to prevent $800 million of losses. Even though the dangerous goods accident do not occur frequently, the damage is severe. However, we can remove the risks enormously along with our proposals. Thank you for listening. This was PeAce.
Thank you, Team CPS, for your presentation. Professor Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, PeAce, for your presentation regarding IMDG code, which is very popular topic in this maritime sector. And I'd like to open the floor for Q&A. Okay, who has enough? 3 minutes.
Thank you for your presentation. This is Triple M. I have a question about container pocket. In the slide 24, in the picture, there is a container pocket in the container, and it says 10 of them are going to be installed in there, and we think that it is not economic for the ship owners because the pocket will take space in the container, which can be used for a space to ship other items for them. So we thought it won't be realistic for them. What do you think about this?
I have to think about the number of the pockets in the container. And we are just saying that 10 pockets because this is kind of new idea that we are introducing. That we are saying that example 10 pockets in the 20-feet container. But it's not really like we have to put 10 pockets in the container. First we need to know that how economical is it. But as we have mentioned is that why we think that why we do the insurance is it? We do insurance just for preparing. But in case of one accident, it costs about millions of dollars. But maybe I think it could be more economical that we have thought is that more economical just think of insurance that we can use for at least 3 or 4 years. Then if not happens, then it's lucky for us. But the number of pockets that I think we need to think more on that. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
For next question, I'd like to come to Professor Schroeder.
Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. I also have a question to the container pocket. Are there any studies so far that system is in place? And I mean, how does it look like in terms of the reliability when there is a fire? Are there any fire laboratory tests? And can you elaborate a bit on that?
Yes. So on the fire laboratory test, that we brought the ideas from the container dryer. that it is placing the container just like hanging on the sill to avoid moisture to damage the goods. So we get the idea from the container dryer. So the research on the fire extinguisher labs, it should be take place in some time. But why we are choosing this topic is to raise an issue on the IMO code so that we can carry out our research on that. I think we need more research on that.
Thank you. And again, I'd like to come to the floor. Marine catches.
Thank you for your educational presentation. We are team the marine catchers. In your presentation, you mentioned about the container buckets to prevent fire in containers. Have you thought about what kind of materials you will use in the pockets?
Okay, thanks. Can you give us a moment for us to discuss? Thank you.
Yeah.
So on our research that the fire has been divided into A, B, C, and D. So in case of A, B, C, then we have to use a powder that is recognized as A, B, C. And for the D, in D case, we have to use D. And you can find that in the regulation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, strangers.
Thank you for your interesting presentation today. And I have a question about the education. According to your presentation, you suggest that seafarers are not entitled to dangerous goods handling. So do you mean it's possible to handle them without the certification? And I'm just wondering, how far is the range of handling dangerous goods for them?
For that case, that we've been also thinking about that, the certification. But you can just imagine that in case of emergency, do I have to show my credit card to them, the certificate that I have this kind of certificate, so I have to extinguish a fire? That's not right. So we have at least 25 seafarers in the container ship, all the large vessels like VLCC, which means that all the 25 seafarers cannot have this kind of certificates to handle the dangerous good, is it? But in case of emergency, we all have to cooperate each other. But so why we have to suggest that we have to include them in the regulation is that we just want to prepare because we don't know what will happen in the sea. So that is why we have to include them in the training. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Anchor Spirit.
Okay, this is Team Anchor Spirit, and thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. We have a question. You have mentioned compulsory training of seafarers. As far as I know, officers and ratings on board are educated and trained regarding various emergency situations, including firefighting appliances. And officers are also knowledgeable of such cargoes on board through stowage plan, and it's part of their function regulated under STCW, cargo handling. So I don't really see the compelling needs in additional trainings.
So why we have come up that in idea is that whether how well you trained you are, whether how well I educated I am. In case we are in the situation like the dangerous situation, we do falling panics. So I think number thousands, like more training is better than the less training. So that is why we said we have to add the training. But in case of that, the plan card, carry over the plan card, that I have mentioned that we have to write down the tools on the plan card. So that is also to mention that the training can be taken by the self-training within the ship. So that is why that we suggest the plan carding first, then the training. So the training won't be, it could be more additional, but I think more training could be better than the less training.
Thank you very much for your response.
Thank you. Any Korea?
Okay, thank you for your presentation. I'm from Korea, and I want to ask questions about the play card. I believe that if I understand correctly, that play cards are for the firefighters who came here to fight up the accident. Am I right?
No, it is. We have a regulation that we have to put the plane carding on the container to indicate the type of cargo that they are carrying the container. It is compulsory.
Yeah, I mean that. I know that the play cards are put on the cargo, but the purpose of it is if you think that it is to prevent further accident from happening and to fight against the accident, if you consider that most of the accidents that happen are related to the fire and the explosion, isn't there any possibility that the play cards might melt in the accident and making it hard to become recognizable? And even if they know what kind of play cards tell them, don't you think that there is a higher possibility that people might not have enough tools, appropriate tools to fight against that accident?
That I have done that with a reference of my experience that I was in the Coast Guard. So I also have faced a lot of the dangerous goods accidents. But when we go on that shore, what we have found is that we have to wait for such a long time because we have to communicate with each other. We have to contact the ship owners and to identify the type of goods that is loaded on the ship because we don't know the type of the toxic material in the ship. So what I say is that the plank carding, as you have mentioned, that it could be melt and it could be the high possibility to melt, but at least we want to, 1% of non-melting plank card, and it might help us to extinguish the fire.
Thank you. I think there is one more follow-up question regarding placarding from Professor.
I also would like to ask a question with regard to the placarding. The question that I have is, very often what you see is when a container is transferred in a different port, there can be all kinds of interferences that may remove some of the placarding, and then, if in the end you may end up with a placarding that isn't accurate anymore, there may be conflicting information because, let's say, if you have 3 labels, for instance, and one of them has been removed, and it may show something from a previous voyage, then you might not necessarily, you may be confused. That's one of the aspects. So how reliable is that sticker? The other question that I would have is basically to which extent it's actually helpful, because as you said, of course, you have to wait in case of an emergency for the cargo information from the ship owner. But at the same time, we know that specifically when it comes to dangerous cargo and specific recent accidents, they were all down in the cargo hold. So those fires typically start very quick and very rapid, so you may not be able to access the cargo hold and see the information that you would need of those containers that are burning. So that's my question also then. Is that then, in this case, really a helpful thing to have, or would you not face a situation that you still have to wait because you can't access the cargo anymore?
I need a quick answer. Less than 30 seconds.
I think that could be a very good question. Thank you so much. I think we need to study more on that, research on that.
Thank you. Say this.
Thank you. Thank you again. Next presenter.